President Museveni delivered the 2024 State of the Nation Address, in which he decried corruption and reiterated Uganda's economic development. Among other topics, given all that is happening in the country and the region, did the President's speech present a full picture of the salient issues on most Ugandan minds? Tonight we'll delve into the President's State of the Nation Address to answer this and other pertinent questions. Let me introduce my panel this evening. I have a senior citizen, founder member of the National Resistance Movement Party, former member of Parliament, Kampala Central. You've had so many hats in the NRM government, but now you're no longer serving directly. The Honorable Captain Francis Babu. Thank you so much for joining us, sir.
Yeah, good evening, and thank you for having us. And on this nice day, some rain came up. The weather is really nice, which gives our Ugandan true picture how beautiful our country is.
We are gifted by nature, but maybe robbed by man. We have the spokesperson of the Alliance for National Transformation, the Honorable Gerald Karuhanga. Thank you so much for honoring our invitation.
Thank you and good evening. It's an honor to be here and talk about Uganda and its future.
Gentlemen, the issue of the State of the Nation Address is very key because the President sort of tells us what they have been able to do, where the country stands, and what it is projected to go. I'm going to begin with a very general question because each one of you get a different understanding when the President speaks, and then we can go to specifics. Let me begin with you, Captain Francis Babu. What do you make of this State of the Nation Address?
Well, I was watching it until I had some problem with the television, but from what I saw, he was trying to paint a picture, giving us a journey, what this country has had. And that journey started all the way back. To an extent, he brought out a newspaper, Uganda Argus, to show us what the problems were. And if you go back, he was virtually telling us what the problems have been, which have been creating the kind of challenges that we have. Now, if you go back, that word federation has been quite elusive. I don't know if you've ever watched a cartoon thing. It's called, it's a little thing which a little car is running on the road and we are chasing it all the time. We've been chasing federation from 1948. And federation has been federation, and integration became an important thing in 1963. In fact, this one was 1963, 6th of June, so he brought the Uganda Argus to show us. Now that means that the Africans from 1957, when we started getting independence, we have failed to unite the whole of the African continent. Not only that, President Nyerere and a few others wanted to unite regions first, like East African Community. Even that one has eluded us. The only federation which was there was the one of Northern and Southern Rhodesia and Nyasaland, which eventually also was, if you like, separated. The only one now which remained was actually South Africa. South Africa became one nation. Initially, of course, they kept on pumping. So when you sit down, what basically President Museveni was saying is that actually Uganda was not formed by Africans. Uganda is a country which was formed in Berlin by Europeans. The Ugandans who were here came from different areas, and then he talked about our races, and these races have never been united at all. The only person who has succeeded from independence time up to now to unite all the people in that country is the Mwalimu Julius Kambarage Nyerere, who united Tanzania into one country. And President actually referred to it when he said he united Zanzibar and Tanganyika.
He had an ally in Karube.
That's right. What I'm saying, he's the only man on the whole of the African continent who has succeeded in that dream of integration.
So let me look at this still with you, Captain Francis Babu, because for almost the last 40 years, there's no leader in this region who has spoken about integration more than Yoweri Museveni. In fact, he talks about it with passion and with conviction. And it appears he's ahead of the pack. What is it that we see some leaders in the region dragging their feet, even though integration can help us for our own strategic and economic development?
The problem is that very one simple word. And the only man who ever brought that thing up to speed was Lee Kuan Yew. Do we have people with meritocracy to run these countries? People who have got merit, people who believe in Africa. Do we have people who are pragmatic? You've just talked about President Museveni, one of the few who have been trying to move these countries forward. And lastly, are they actually honest? It's one word.
Let me come to you, Honorable Gerard Karuhanga. On the area of production, you see Uganda, we are trying to get an agrarian kind of revolution, increase our food production, sugar production, beef production. But even within the common market protocol, when you have a lot of sugar, you have beef, you have milk, you are begging, literally begging the Kenyans, begging the Tanzanians to buy your goods, even though we are into this thing called the common market. So East African agenda seems to be misguided.
So firstly, I mean, listening to the president again, I had thought that maybe, and maybe I think we are too hopeful, I don't know, because I had thought that maybe this time he would depart away from his history lectures and then address the nation on the salient issues and very particular issues. I don't think we've had times when people are going through a very difficult time like they're doing right now. That for the first time, you even have scientists who really care about research worried about the increase in suicides. We are really going through a very, very difficult time. So I had thought that, you know, this whole talk of making the state as if Uganda is NRM and NRM is Uganda and then it's history. I mean, seriously, if you are talking about the purchasing power of the East African community, address it. There is no way you can...
The criminality on the streets of Kampala.
Exactly. The criminality, the high levels of unemployment of the young people of this country. You know, I mean, I served as a youth member of parliament. I have seen the degree of how young people are unemployed in this country. I mean, honestly, if anyone is not worried about that, I think then there's a really, really serious problem.
Let me put it like this, Gerard. Sometimes you would say, you need to listen to President Museveni maybe once in 10 years, because the speech seems to be the same. Is that a strategy? Exactly.
I mean, when you've said it, I mean, to be honest, I served for 10 years in Parliament, and after about listening to the speeches, after about 4 years, I started wondering whether it was still necessary. And to be honest, I think I dropped going for most of those things. And I wasn't surprised that even today, the opposition, largely officially, agreed not to attend. I mean, you go and listen and wait a minute. Like, okay, did you actually change the dates? And I mean, so back to your question. If you want to address East Africa and deal with the importance, the significance of bringing us together, the benefits of having this market, you must be very particular at empowering this East African. That if you say, we bring Rwanda, Congo, Sudan, Tanzania, now it has even grown bigger, Kenya, Uganda, and the other brothers. Please, if you are serious about this, if your rhetoric, your speeches mean exactly what you are saying, show it to me in your actions that you really want this Ugandan to have his purchasing power increasing. Show me how you are empowering him. Show me that you are not wasting billions on one side to individuals, the huge administration with a huge cabinet, a huge parliament, almost the size of India's parliament, and then show me that you are diverting these resources into ensuring that there is more production. Think about the tea. The tea farmers have been increasing. When I heard him speak about it, I said, this man, the farmers have been crying and crying and crying because now they're cutting down their tea because the prices are so low.
Ask me about that. I come from a tea growing region of Fort Portal.
The prices are so low. No one wants to talk to the farmers. To make matters worse, the other day is in Toro, and then people raise the issue again. And I mean, honestly, this condescending approach must also stop. And then he says, oh, I mean, when I was talking about the 4 acres, I never mentioned the tea. Tea is planted and grown by the wealthy people. I said, wait a minute. Are you actually addressing the 80% of the citizens of this country that are actually really struggling? Moreover, those are the poor who are really before him. So when today I heard him talk about how we have increased in tea production, in coffee production, I said, are you actually speaking to this farmer? Are you really helping him or this lady who has put her 2-3 acres to the production of this tea and saying, I mean, I can also get school fees for my children, my family can have better income, I can get money for healthcare, I can improve my livelihood or my family or my community. So that's what I had thought the president would address, that you speak to Ugandans and you speak to their issues.
Captain Babu.
Yes, sir.
You know, if Ugandans put their minds into agriculture and we have an agrarian kind of revolution, God has placed us in a place of the world that is different from any other.
Yes.
In fact, we have the capacity to produce more than anybody else. They could not even dare to compete because everything is in our favor. What makes us fail?
Mismanagement. One word. Mismanagement. And people being parochial about very simple things. We used to have cooperatives here. We used to have societies. We used to have a bank, a cooperative bank. We used to have a local bank called UCB. Now all this went away because some clever aleck from somewhere, in connivance with some foreigners, decided that economically it is not viable to have a bank. And today, the Kenya Commercial Bank, which started after ours, is all over East Africa, and ours is nowhere to be seen. The other one is the Cooperative Bank. We had somebody the other day, I heard them talking, we want to start an agriculture bank. What happened to
In fact, I'm told Equity Bank, which is a Kenyan bank, locally grown,
yes,
has last year made more profits than all the Ugandan banks combined.
So the reason I brought those two was simple. We are talking about mismanagement and people talking theories. We have a lot of, and I'm sorry, I'm going to ask you to allow me to forgive me at the same time. Our educated class and our political class has not done us any favor at all. They are the problem. Instead of getting the issue and, as he said, to have action and get our people to move into the money economy, we've been keeping them outside the money economy with things like microfinancing, which eventually they believe is a handout, which is not done very well. And when you think about that, you look at the Grameen Bank in Bangladesh, started by Professor Yunus, which helped a lot of women and men, poor people, to come up, and today one of the most powerful group in that country. Then you begin to wonder, why do you start these microfinances and then they can't work?
Let me put this again to you, Captain Francis Babu, because in his speech today, the president sounded very optimistic. He sounded like the trajectory is good, and he said that Uganda is now in a lower middle income status. But I'm wondering, because you were part of NRM at one point, President John Pombe Magufuli was able to put Tanzania in the middle income status in 5 years. President Museveni has had almost 40 years. We're still in the basement.
Yes, the fact that he recognizes that certain things must be done to achieve that aim that we all have, to me, I thank him for that. But I would like him to put it in action. And I agree with Biarang that this has been repeated over and over again. The question is, you're repeating it because it is right. If you did it correctly, it will give you the result. The question is, can you implement it? So the word here is one word: we have failed to implement.
Let me put this to you, Honorable Jared Karuhanga. What is it that we learn from John Pombe Magufuli in 5 years to catapult the United Republic of Tanzania to middle income status, and we don't learn from Yoweri Museveni?
I think you can summarily use a word called pragmatism. You know, being pragmatic is looking and considering things in a rather more practical way than the theoretical way. If you've been keenly following President Museveni, he makes all these speeches, like he actually knows all the things that we need to have done in our country. He appreciates them, he understands them, he speaks about them, but he does literally almost nothing about them. And now that's the difference. I think Magufuli came in and he had seen a country for so long, having been also around politics, and said, but what is it that I can make as a difference for my country? I mean, he had also his issues, to be honest. I mean, especially the human rights and those who opposed him. But in terms of delivering the public good, the common good, people getting out of their own sweat, progress, and looking out for the plight of a citizen of a country, he did great. And that's why I think President Museveni, I don't think there are so many African leaders who have had such a consistent time. I mean, 38 years is not a short time. A number of now ministers in his cabinet were not even born when he became president. And now you look back and try to say, okay, now today we have a State of the Nation address, and we have these 38 years. Other than these history lectures, in 38 years, I mean, Singapore you talked about, you can talk about South Korea, you can talk about Malaysia. These countries were largely at the same level we were. In less than 25 years, they were first-class countries. We are still grappling with the same challenges.
Captain,
you know, it's so painful, Patrick, when you see how much a parent sacrifices to educate his or her child. And all the hope is in this child to say, but you know what, we don't have much. We have these children, they are 7 or 8. Maybe if we educate 2 of them, they could be the ones who carry this candle, bear the candle, and we have some light in our home, in our community. And then, just as if it's a pattern, and literally, honestly, I had thought President Museveni today, he would address the unemployment, the lack of opportunity of young people in this country. Because it is so painful to see how much, and you see before, on one hand you would think it's a thing of the young people, but now it's also a very serious thing for the parents as well. Because now they have these kids, they are graduates, they have degrees and diplomas, they have sold what they have, and they are back home with them.
But you know, we don't only have a problem of unemployment, but some of our graduates are also unemployable. I'm told most of them need some retooling. I don't know whether that's true, but I hear those stories. Let me come back to you, Captain Francis, because, you know, where do we go from here? Can we always say, because of our tumultuous past, that has affected Uganda? So 38 years of President Yoweri Museveni, yes, but because he was trying to fix a country that was in the doldrums, because of our checkered and tumultuous past, that has been a constant problem for Uganda to advance.
You know, whenever we analyze the situations in Uganda, we jump 1 or 2 things. Earlier on, I was happy that Karan talked about Tanzania and Magufuli. But Magufuli found a foundation. The man called Mwalimu Julius Kambarage Nyerere dug a foundation, a very strong foundation, using 3 simple things. The word was Ujamaa.
Ujamaa was a disaster.
No, Undugu. And the other one was the language. Undugu Ujamaa is brotherhood. Now, what that basically translated to is the one word, unity. Tanzania has 102 tribes. He managed to put those people into one group called Tanzania. From there, Magufuli now had a basis in which he could carry out the things he did. Now, unfortunately, for you very highly educated people, when you apply a bit of pressure, human right comes in. Because here you have to get people to move into the right direction by being pragmatic. Now, you asked a question. Here in Uganda, what is one of the biggest problems we have? Until now, nobody, from independence up now, has united this country. We need our people to come together. We need to find a formula. We need them to be part of the whole thing. Now, here they are talking about being part of the money economy. No, being part of the country. We need to be all one Ugandan. And from that point, you can now be pragmatic and push them in the right direction by being honest. The one word is honest. You must do things with honesty. You must love this country, and the people then will believe in you. So, but we know what is happening now? People do not believe in our political class.
Okay, Honorable Gerard Karuhanga, was it a misguided move to actually try to bring back these cultural institutions the way they are? Because I see, we seem to have many people now will swear allegiance with a lot of passion where I come from, in Toro, to their king. In Buganda, it is even over and above. In Koba Zambogo, in Rwenzururu, you heard of the Kirumira Mutima who could do anything. And the first allegiance seems to be in our tribal cocoons than actually in a nation. So we're not regressing. It's
important to protect our cultures, our values. That's basically who we are. I mean, a very uncultured people are very difficult people to deal with. And so these belongings that we are lucky to have been born in are some of the very good cultural values. We need to protect them. We need to celebrate our institutions of culture. However, I think there was a fundamental mistake deliberately done by this government. And this was to tell the cultural leaders and the institutions around our cultures that steer away completely from the public good. Don't engage with the public. Don't engage with the citizenry. And so you have kings who are largely or more or less caged in their own palaces. And yet these could actually be magnets of progress. They could inspire lots of ideas and bring people together to focus on things that really, you can imagine if the King of Toro today was speaking about tea and how people are suffering with the tea issues, government probably would listen. But they know the moment he speaks, probably he would galvanize all the entire Toro sub-region, and then there would be one group and probably would be a challenge now to government. And so there was a deliberate effort to bring a semblance of cultural institutions, but largely keep them caged and literally muzzled to say almost nothing. And so we missed out also, we missed out on the opportunities that we would get from these cultural institutions. And this all goes to the good intentions. You know, when you have the common good, the public good at heart as a leader, whatever you do, whatever decisions you make, whatever policies you create, you can read in it. You can read it not just in, you can read it in, not just in rhetoric, in speeches, but you can see it in action. That, you know, so that has been largely the challenge, that you have government that has been here for so long, and everything that is done is mostly centered about power retention. And see, power retention comes with one word, which is patronage. Patronage is such an expensive system, because you must keep paying people to keep them happy. And so you ask yourself, we collect lots of money, we borrow lots of money, both locally and internationally, but you don't see the money in the country. Countries like South Korea or Singapore borrowed into their progress. They borrowed lots and lots of money. But they worked ways to make sure this money remained in the country and remained focused on the public good, not on self-aggrandizement. That's where we have a challenge. That there is money in very few hands, and this money, they must as well hide it. So they can't invest it in factories that would employ the young people, because then they don't want anyone to see them. So the public good, this element of having the nation at heart, is such an elusive thing with this government that I think it's almost too late.
Captain Francis Babu, we seem to be living a lie.
Yes.
That we have a nation, because every time there's a spike of some form of violence, you can actually see Kampala literally going crazy, almost about to get destroyed in one day.
Yes.
People divide themselves. You can feel an element is them and us, us and them, or something like that.
Right.
There's an element of bitterness, there's an element of anger, there's an element of frustration, and an element of people feeling disregarded. What can glue this nation together? So that how can we put our interests together and leave the parochial thing that we seem to be interested in?
You know, my brother, I sometimes wonder whether God gave us a beautiful country, beautiful people, and politics became elusive. If we go back and look at the British coming here, they didn't have too many people. They said, when they arrived here and they saw the kingdoms, they went back and said, they've never seen such good organized people. And then they said, okay, one of the kings said, can you come here and educate us and all that? And so they made this country a protectorate. One of the very few in the whole of Africa to be a protectorate. The rest were colonies. The British came and actually, settled. One of the reasons why the border of Uganda came from Naivasha to where it is because Dalamea wanted the land in Naivasha to form farms. So that one was a colony who were a protectorate. They went through the kings. And the kings did a very wonderful job. Now, if these people, why do people have this hatred of cultural institution? I've never known. Some people bring some parochial arguments. Oh, they treated us like slaves, they did this. But all kingdom had these problems. The very people who you claim to be your friends, the Europeans and whatnot, they have never got rid of their cultural institutions. The cultural institutions have become weak with modernization, but they are still there. So the important thing is, if you want to unite this country, and you said it very well, if I want to unite this country today, I would get all these cultural leaders, form them into a group, and tell them, where do we go next? Can we unite this country? And within a year, this country would be united. Because the people believe in their culture. People believe in their country. And by doing so, you can change this country. You don't have to sideline them. In fact, making one of the kings the president of this country, and then going and writing a book, when I saw him holding the Bible, I knew my problems were over. That kind of thing. That kind of attitude.
You know, the reality today, Honorable Karuhanga, and even Ugandans watching, even if you're a corporate Ugandan, all of us are in perpetual vulnerability. You're just one medical bill away, one medical bill within a local hospital here for you to get back into oblivion, like total abject poverty. You pray to God that nothing happens to you, because should you go to hospital, end of those, 1 week, Honorable Karuhanga, you'll go back to the village if you have a village.
It's really...
I like the Dutch beat, if you have a village.
Yeah.
Because some people have sold the villages to come and raid border.
Yes.
It's such a worrying state. When you get phone calls from our people in our constituencies, and somebody's literally pleading, not for 1 million shillings, not for 200,000 shillings, but for 20,000 shillings. And he even says, if you don't mind, you can even send it to the doctor. Because he wants to make sure that you know that he just doesn't want the money for himself or herself.
Yes.
And this is a man that probably you are beginning to see on the village, beginning to give a bit of hope on that village, promising, yeah, a bit promising. And then you ask yourself, so how about the other ones who were not even promising a few years ago? So the situation we're in, and it's even made worse. You know, there's one thing of the whole practical suffering, but then it gets even more psychologically disturbing when they see the wastage on the other hand, which is the other issue I thought President Museveni would address today, corruption. I mean, in our own case, I think it has now become a global issue. I mean, when you see social media, you see the Kenyans, the memes that people are really playing around with about Uganda and its corruption. And then you're thinking, wait a minute, you mean we are probably holding this now flag of corruption probably across the entire continent?
We're in pole position.
and it goes, you see, corruption goes again also with wastage. You see, you imagine, you have a president that has a state house budget of close to 900 billion shillings a year. That's about 3 billion shillings literally per day. We're not talking about the presidency.
Gentlemen, so hold on to your point, gentlemen.
It's sad. It's really sad.
We're going to take a break, and on the spot we'll be right back.
Yeah.
Welcome back. You're watching On the Spot. My name is Patrick Kamara. My guests tonight are Captain Francis Babu and Honorable Gerald Karuhanga. we are looking into the State of the Nation address by President Museveni, which he gave today. One of the issues he talked about was the challenge of corruption in Uganda. And if you remember, especially you, Honorable Captain Francis Babu, when President Museveni came to power in 1986, I think point number 7 out of his 10-point program was fighting corruption. 38 years down the road, corruption is still having that monster-headed head. Even when they try to crush it, it rises from the ashes like the Egyptian phoenix. Today, he even went even deeper to say people close to him are working like commission agents, getting bribes so that they can take people to go and visit him.
Yes.
If somebody close to State House, somebody, deep state,
yes,
who has the capacity to meet the president, wants a bribe to take you to meet the president, how low can we fall?
Well, first and foremost, I think time comes when we should be honest to each other. Corruption is one of the old vices with the prostitution. Two things. Corruption has been a problem for all governments in the world. And they've even got an index. It's called Corruption Perception Index, CPI. And they tell you which country where they stand on that ladder. So when you sit down and talk about corruption, you have to be fair and speak openly about it. And today, the president talked about State House. That's what, and that to me was a good thing, because we've had it before, but in passing. This time he talked about it. Now, the important thing about corruption is not just to talk about it, but to have action. Now, what has happened in most countries, and by the way, it is in the Millennium Development Goals, I think it's number 16, they talk about accountability. It is also everywhere. People talk about accountability before they give you the money, to lend you money or to give you. So corruption has become a very important thing. Now, corruption, has been defined in many different ways, depending on which government you have. Now, what is very interesting here is that people have known about corruption. We've known about corruption in generation or electricity dams. We've known it in roads. We've known it in government itself. We've known it with certain people. People have been caught red-handed. Everything has happened. And the action has been, if you like, a little bit temperamental. They play games with it. So time has come. And this business of saying, oh, no, it's the people around the president who are bad. It's the president who must answer now, not the people around him. The president, the back is in the president's court.
But today he said his own people very close are taking bribes, yes, so that they can maybe somebody get access to him.
That's right, that's what I was saying.
But though at least he says the action has been taken on that. He
was talking about State House. Now, corruption, the other day I was watching TV, and some guy had stolen half a bag of coffee beans. He was killed. And so one of my children said, if this one is killed, how about these guys who are stealing millions are still alive? That gives you the perception why the Chinese have got a capital offense for corruption. You're killed. Time has come. Corruption has become a nuisance in this country. People who have done law tell us when something is a nuisance, you must find a way to solve that problem.
Let me come to Honorable Karuhanga, because let us understand that there's somebody who's giving the bribe and there's someone who's asking for the bribe. So even in public officials themselves, and we, the rest of Uganda, have all fallen short. Including people who perhaps are at the pulpit, they also have a moral dilemma. It appears the corruption, hydra has entered, permeated into the Ugandan society, that you sometimes fail to say who can stand out and have a sense of integrity that is impeccable. Doesn't that scare you?
It is. It's worrying. When you see the degree of corruption, the extent of corruption, and the little, or if almost nothing of the efforts towards really fighting it. And to make matters worse is how you keep spending and establishing more institutions to basically spend more in the name of fighting corruption. You can imagine how many institutions we have. the Inspectorate of Government, the IGG, you have the DPP, you have police, and the police there is the CID, then you have State House Anti-Corruption Agency, and then you have all sorts of creations, and all that is more expenditure, apparently, to fight corruption. Now, what we should be reminded of are some of the very clear examples, things that we've seen so prevalent in our country, that speak about the seriousness, if there was any, to fight corruption. So, you have a situation in Parliament, and you have a leader, you have a president, who has consistently told you, I mean, I served in the Public Council Committee for 7.5 years, and really could, at some points, would meet the president over his own actions, his own letters, where he ordered and billions of money were spent. And then he would tell us that, you know, I know these things. In a number of cases, he would even mention the names. And then in one of the meetings, I asked him personally, I said, Mr. President, every time you're engaged over corruption, you actually keep saying you know these thieves. Today, you even mentioned the names. These are your appointees. These are your ministers. So what message are you sending to Ugandans that I know the thieves, I have appointed them, and I'm okay to keep them around?
Let me even bring you to speed as of today. Yes. And he's quoted saying, I now have proof of corruption racket from the Minister of Finance to Parliament. We are going to crush them. I will not grant them amnesty. With the crushing of corruption, Uganda is unstoppable. Do you believe him?
No, I mean, it's all rhetoric. I mean, the metaphoric expression of the fish, I mean, it's true. The fish beginning to rot from the head, I kept studying it for a while, and I mean, honestly, when you dissect this whole thing, seriously, if you want to fight corruption in this country, sometimes actually they make it appear as if it's rocket science. There are obvious cases. We were in Parliament, we wrote a report, investigated, a very unbelievable matter. Parliament sits and resolves to borrow $200 million, which is about 700 billion shillings, to pay arrears for medical suppliers, fellows who are supplying us medicine who had not been paid for 3 years. These fellows in the Ministry of Finance get that money and literally share it. So we investigate the medical stores, and the Minister of Health said, we don't have drugs. And said, what happened? The suppliers have said they can no longer give us drugs. And then we bring out a report. We bring out the individuals, how this money was even borrowed at a very high rate. When there was even money, we could have picked which was free interest. They pick it, share this money. We engage the speaker. The speaker calls the president says he's aware about it. He knows even the individuals. I can tell you that 700 billion went missing. No one was arrested. No one was charged or prosecuted. And they're all free men. So
the issue of rhetoric, somebody has sent me a message here. I think, let me read it. He says, I think, while the rhetoric is strong, the Ugandan people are demanding more than words. The effectiveness of any meaningful anti-corruption crusade depends on tangible actions, including the prosecution of offenders and the implementation of robust anti-corruption, anti-impunity, anti-informality measures. Historical patterns suggest skepticism, as previous promises have often fallen short in delivering concrete results. Therefore, the success of this seemingly renewed initiative will hinge on iron fist approach and political will to enforce accountability consistently across board.
Yes.
Crispin Kaheru.
He has said it very well.
Crispin Kaheru.
He has said it very well. And when I came here, I showed you this little book where Mzee Julius Kambarage Nyerere has been named as a servant of God. And one of the reasons why that has happened is because he fought corruption throughout his life. And he is one of the reasons why he might eventually be canonized and to become a saint.
And by the way, President Museveni is a student of Julius Nyerere. Correct. I have not seen him, you know, have a lot of respect of any leader,
yes,
more than Julius Kambarage Nyerere.
Yes, and by the way, even in the Bible, they talk about corruption. Everywhere they talk about corruption. We are talking about corruption, drugs, and injustice. You're talking about our children. By the way, you are talking about half of our children are having problems because of this corruption. We are having problems everywhere. Our hospitals, our schools, they are decaying. And the people who are stealing eventually want to use the same facilities. You know, while you're in the government, they can take you to London, they can take you to India. But once you get out of government, you still have to go to this hospital where you stole the drugs from. You still have to go to this hospital where you sold the machine from. You still have to go to that school. Your children have to go to that school which you refuse to give subvention. So at the end of the day, corruption is a very bad vice. And we need to sit down and tell our people, fine, you want to have some money, but you are stealing your own money. This money you're stealing is actually yours, for your children, for your posterity, for this country. So we need to get the perception, the true perception of what corruption is all about. And by the way, this man, PLO Lumumba, he said it is no longer corruption. This is an industrial looting at an industrial scale. Now, it is. There are people, because the IGG told us they take 10 trillion a year, isn't it?
Yes. 20.
20. So, if that is so, that's a huge sum of money. We need an answer to that. When she said it was 20 trillion, how far has she gone to recover some of it? We need action. Action speaks louder than words. I want to take this opportunity now, through this channel, that people do not believe in our political class and our leadership anymore. They have to change.
So now, don't we still have people in this country of high name recognition and repute who should maybe come up? They could be having different offices, because the world is not bad because we have bad men. Sometimes the world is bad because good men are silent. Why are good men silent? Don't we have them? The bishops, the Qadi, the pastors, or if them have fallen short?
Let me just quote what Lumumba said. Professor Lumumba, he was talking to people. Then he said, you know, when I was sitting here, I had all of you bubbling with all these very fantastic ideas. Very good. They can make this country become perfect in the same day. Unfortunately, you are not in power. The people who can change this country are sidelined. They are not allowed to be near. They do all sorts of things to them. If this, by the way, the people who are spoiling this country is a small group of people. If you took a percentage, they are not even 1,000.
Cabal. The cabal.
It's a cabal.
But, well, talking about, they are very decent and honest men and women in this country.
Oh, yes.
If you want to check it, look at how the private sector actually, in some of these companies, how it thrives. And you see some companies. I mean, we have even some of our success stories like Centenary Bank, yeah, that you can talk about and you feel you're proud of an institution. Run, largely, almost entirely run by
Maybe,
Ugandans.
I think we, the elite, have been a disappointment to Uganda.
I said it earlier on.
Because if you're saying there are good men and women, yes, they are. But there's a saying, if you're a good man and women and you stand by and watch and let things happen, then you're not good anyway.
Exactly. So the challenge is, progressively, we've gotten so many objective people believing and actually shunning leadership. That it is too dirty, it is too... So you look at Parliament, for instance. I mean, you ask yourself, sometimes you listen and you're like, okay, how did we get here? I mean, we have so many very, very objective people in this country. So I think the politics of our country got so dirty that those who felt like they wanted to keep their reputation, their names valued so much, shunned politics, shunned leadership at a very, very heavy expense for the entire country. Now, that we are suffering it. And that if we really care about turning the tide around, we must engage and really go in and be into politics. Because seriously, if you look at the level or the extent at which objective people don't want to participate in politics, it must be really worry everyone. That you talk to people and they are so aggrieved of everything that is being done. But if you begin talking about them, maybe let's try and you run and become a district chairman or you become a member of parliament. And he says, that's an area that I cannot risk going into because it will destroy my reputation. Now, then the question is, so how are we going to change it? How are we going to turn it around? This we must own. I mean, honestly, you know, politically speaking, sometimes we want to say very nice things to each other and all that, but I think we really need to speak to each other now.
Nice
and yes, and face each other and say, gentlemen and ladies, on this one, it is us.
You're tempting me. Gerard, you're tempting me.
No, they are saying, you should. Why not? Why not? You should, because I mean, we must take this, as I say, you take the bull by the horns.
You know,
if we don't, we shall remain in this trouble.
You people talk about democracy. You know, we've copied these things from the white people. Democracy, democracy. A party, a political party, is supposed to give us two main things. First, give us a program, how they're going to run the country, and the second, give us good leaders. They're supposed to go for leadership drive. What happened in the olden days before we started all this? The kingdoms in your village where you come from, there are homes. And in each different home, they've got leadership. They know. And everybody in that kingdom knew that in certain areas, in certain places, there were leaders. So they went for leadership. They did not wait for an auction. What we're having now is an auction of leaders.
But you see, the Gomborola chief of the day had the powers to give or even to disappoint.
Yes.
He could give you something or take away something from you.
Yes.
The Gomborola chief of the day, I even don't know him or her. There's nothing he can give you, there's nothing he can disappoint you for.
One time
so he has no power.
I was sitting somewhere and said we need to do what they call leadership drive. I want Karuhanga to go to his area and look at every possibility. Who are the good leaders? And even if possible, try and cultivate and get to know who these people are and put them in a stream. We need to sit down in this country and get good leaders, whether you like it or you don't. It's a fact.
So if we were to audit ourselves as a people, as we Ugandans, I think we're also to blame. There's a lack of civic competence.
Yes.
There's a lack of a vibrant citizenry. People who should be able to stand and demand what is theirs and also understand their right.
Yeah.
When you see how our voting patterns, sometimes we're like, no, we could have done better, you know? So the lack of civic competence, Gerard, is really killing our country. Where do we blame that?
But Kamara, let's get one point clear. Look at the white men. They went from kingdoms into the modern democracy after the Industrial Revolution. Our kingdom were shunned. We went from zero to something we didn't know, something new. We did not go into it. It did not augur. So sometimes don't blame us. You brought something until 1948, 1950. The British were ruling us from London. They never brought democracy here. Suddenly, in 1950, they formed parties. Parties are formed on parochial levels. We end up with all sorts of funny things. All I am trying to say is that we are having a problem getting into this system that we so want, and we need to find out how to get into it.
How do we get into it?
Yeah, so if you want to deal largely with the challenge seriously and aggressively, in most cases you want to dig and say, where is the root cause? How did we end up here? I remember way back, and I'm sure we will recall, some time back we had civics taught as a subject in school. That the Electoral Commission actually, before elections, always made rounds across the country, training and engaging Ugandans on what are the responsibilities of leaders and what are the responsibilities of the citizens. There was civic education. And so, those were deliberately taken away. Not by any accident. The subject called civics was scrapped off. It was done in O-level, that was removed. The funding for the Electoral Commission to carry out, because if you realize the Electoral Commission largely does one thing.
Electoral education.
So they basically carry out the election, which is probably almost a 1 year's activity. So the other 4 years, the other cardinal responsibility of the Electoral Commission would be to engage the citizenry on the responsibilities, on the obligations of the citizens. Okay. How do you choose a leader that will transform your community? Gentlemen,
we're going to take a very quick break, and on the spot, when we are back, I'll open the line so that you two at home, wherever you are, you can have your say. We'll be right back. Welcome back. You're watching On the Spot. My name is Patrick Kamara. My guests tonight are Honorable Captain Francis Babu and Honorable Gerard Karuhanga. We're discussing the State of the Nation address as presented today by President Yoweri Museveni. You know, earlier you talked about South Korea, by the way, has invited the heads of state of Africa, and there's a South Korea Africa summit, I think, taking place in Seoul. But a friend of mine called Fred Karamagi from Fort Portal, he sent me something, and it says South Korea Africa summit. South Korea population 52 million, and area in square kilometers 100,000. GDP $1.7 trillion. Africa, the population 1.4 billion.
Correct.
Area in square kilometers 30 million. And our GDP as Africa, $3.1 trillion. And he says, I think this is like a miracle. A tree went to the bird. and if you remember, and yet South Korea was at our level, we as Uganda, in 1960. Now South Korea is beating all African countries put together with a population of 1.4 billion. And perhaps they landed today in Seoul and put them in a bus and had them somewhere in a conference room.
Oh, no.
Things...
They gave them, I saw the car where one of the president came in.
I'm only saying, okay, hyperbole a bit, but the other day they put them in a bus.
Yeah,
and President Ruto said he wasn't going to go for such meetings again because they had them together. Okay, I use that figuratively, but at the end of the day, why can't South Korea come to us? At least they
go to Addis Ababa.
They should come to Addis Ababa. But you know, because it's demeaning to our leaders to go to a country of 50 million people, you're leading 1.4 billion, literally.
No, I think
it doesn't look good.
I think it's the leaders who are demeaning themselves. You see, if you are running, if your act is good, if you are running your company or organization well, you also have some sense of pride and decency, and even the other people watch. There's something or certain things people will not engage you on because they know that this is the category of a leader, of a serious grouping. So our leaders have done lots of crazy, unbelievable things on the continent that they realize that you can actually hide them as if you are really managing a crowd. And they play along. So if they were doing objective, serious things, one, they would be respected, but two, the citizenry wouldn't allow them to do that.
You see, when they are still in South Korea, Modi in India is thinking of the Africa-India summit. When he's done with that, even now Take Africa summit. Before you know it, everybody's having a go at us.
I mean, Japan, if it's not Japan, it is China, then it is now Turkey, and then you have, I mean, honestly, we've brought ourselves to where we are.
One of these political commentator made, a European commentator said, I don't understand why we are having this problem. The Africans, why is it that they can't get it right? The Indian, the Chinese, or the Easterners, they study the West. They copy them. And now the East is competing with the people they copy from. The Africans has copied football. They've done very well. Apart from that, they've not done well anywhere else. So the whole idea is because of our leadership. If you look at South Korea, initially, when they started, with all the human rights, with all the leaders even being put in prison, they eventually got it right. They are now, in fact, they named them as the 5 Tigers. You remember? There was something called the 5 Tigers. The Asian Tigers. The Asian Tigers. These guys have developed their countries. Singapore today is reached a point when they have to import labor because all their citizens are of high-tech level. The question is, what are we doing? Why are we not there? The Indian continent, India, started something called the Indian Institute of Technology. They trained their people from an artisan to going to the moon. India is one of the very few countries where people have gone to the moon. The question is, where are we? What is it that we don't have? Why can't we do it? And we should stop talking
Okay, this is the moment when I want you to have your say who's watching. You can see the numbers on the screen. You call us and tell us what you think. I think we already have a call online. Hello. Hello. Yes, good evening, sir. What's your name and where are you calling from?
Hey, good evening. I'm Grace Museveni. I'm calling from Makere.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Honorable Judge Garhang and Senior Citizen Francis Babu. I think the challenge we are facing is we should take collective responsibility as a country. I think indeed, as you are pointing out, it's a question of leadership. And I think we are not understanding the concept of leadership, because leadership is an interactive, a complex interactive dynamic that has a capability of producing emergent outcomes. What we are facing today is that we are facing this level of corruption. We participated either directly or indirectly in bringing it here. I think indifference actually of citizens is some form of subtle corruption. If we see something going wrong and we cannot take action, then you are corrupt.
All right. I want to thank you very much. I want to thank you very much. I'll call her there from Makere. There's a Ugandan here who is very optimistic. He says the tone of the president's statement on corruption in government ministries and parliament demonstrates a renewed momentum to fight the voice of corruption. Sooner than later, we believe President Museveni will this time deal with corruption without fear or favor decisively. It's a shame that government agencies are not dealing with this matter aggressively. There is a Ugandan who has sent a message who sounds very optimistic, having listened to President Museveni's State of the Nation address today. I have another call online. Hello. Hello. I have a call online. Hello. Okay. You can keep those calls coming in as you know, there are two types of people. There are those who are very optimistic and hopeful from the president's speech, but there are also those who don't find anything to celebrate about. And maybe there's somebody who has been waiting online, and I think I should give him an opportunity to express themselves. Hello?
Hello?
Yes, sir.
This is Nayepe, sir.
I'm sorry?
Nayepe of Buketi Anti-Corruption Coalition, Executive Director.
Oh, sir. Okay, go right ahead.
Yes, this corruption element, I've heard even from Mzee Babu saying that why are leaders fired? This thing needs to train actually to teach everybody about mindset change.
Yes. Okay.
Today, I've been in the office there in Para House, 6th floor, room 3. And we were writing to residents. They have taken money. They have crowded the state. They are reverends. You see where we are going. So
it's not any better. It's not any better even at the pulpit. We see it. It's not any better even at the pulpit. Sometimes we see it, and you wonder. For those who go to churches, sometimes if you don't have a spirit of discernment, don't think whatever you're seeing, whether that miracle or whatever it is, whether it is God, from God or not, you have to be very careful.
Hello.
Yes, we have a call online. Hello.
Yes, good evening, Patrick.
Good evening, sir. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Bailon Atuha from Kampala.
Go right ahead, Bailon.
I think as a country we have reached a state where it is only good intervention, because every person, every group is extreme in its beliefs. And I want to believe that to some extent, if the president has to deal with it that way, has to be fair. Now, us who are in extreme think he's responsible, is equally corrupt. But the way the extremism is even beyond that of terrorists, because if you look at how politicians behave, you look at what is happening in the academia, you look at religious leaders, I think we just need a military system. We need to get rid of some of these institutions, because we can't have such corruption when we have very many anti-corruption institutions.
Thank you very much.
I believe that should be the way to go.
Thank you very much. In the biblical times, when men or man could fall so low, God always had an intervention. There was a place called Sodom and Gomorrah. He nuked it.
Yes.
and then there was a place called Corinth. So I have another caller. I'm going to take only one caller, then we can conclude here. I have a call online. Hello. Hello. I have a call online. Hello. Okay, I'm cutting that line. I'm sorry. We cannot be able to see you. We have comms challenges to your line there. Probably I'll have to take one more, and then I'll have my guests make their final submissions. I have a caller. Hello.
Hello.
What's your name, sir?
My name is Sam Yamu. I'm calling from Nakwero, Kampala.
Okay.
My issue really is on the president's address on corruption.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like he's spoken a lot about it, but done nothing in terms of implementation. And to make it worse, some of the people who have been mentioned in corruption scandals have actually kept their positions. If anything, they've been promoted. Okay. So this really leaves us ordinary Ugandans at a crossroads. We don't know whether the president really means it or he's just sort of trying to depict
maybe he's also
the picture to Ugandans that is actually fighting corruption.
All right.
Yet deep inside him, probably, I'm sorry to say, probably benefiting from the loot. So I think this means we need to do a lot than just talking.
I think he's well-intentioned. Probably now he's reached a point where he's overwhelmed, because the issue is just within our DNA, almost. Thank you very much. The callers, we celebrate your company. Captain Francis Babu, what's going to be your concluding submission?
Before we went into the telephone, you asked me whether we have hope. Yes, I have hope. I have hope, and not only have hope, I always give everybody a chance. It's human nature. If the president says this time, and he's given us a promise on a pulpit and on a date, today is the 6th, that promise we want to see him, we want to hold him responsible to it. We want him to show us how he can go ahead and deal with these problems. And we give him that chance. He's our president. Now, the other point, all the things we are talking about is to try and support him, to try and see if we can implement them. The reason why we bring Magufuli, the reason why we talk about other people, we want him to say, look, if it can be done in Tanzania, we can do it. You talked about, God. They told us that we are made into the
image of God.
In the image of God. So God is in us. Therefore, we should use that power to try and change our direction. Now, the gentleman who talked about mindset change made a very good point. Every Ugandan, whether from the president to the lowest, we must have a mindset change on corruption. We must make corruption unacceptable in our society, regardless of whether we are in church, whether we are in government, whether we are in which ministry. So time has come. Can we change?
Gerard, what's going to be your parting shot?
I think we need to own up as Ugandans. The prevalent sense of resignation and the giving up, literally, and let it be in free drive, more or less, that is going to only get us worse and worse. So what I believe in, where there is hope, where I find hope in this nation, is so much still in Ugandans themselves. Ugandans, I think, historically, we are people who struggle, we keep struggling, we don't give up. If you check in the region, for instance, we've struggled and struggled and struggled. It is sad that up to now, even with the struggles we've had, we've probably not seen, let's say, peaceful transition from one leader to another. But it appears, when you check also other places, that people who don't give up on struggling, on pushing for better, day in, day out, they eventually get there.
Gentlemen,
and therefore we will certainly get there.
I want to thank you so much for your submission, for your time, for honoring our invitation. I want to thank you, the viewer, for your company. But one thing I know, we Ugandans, we have a good country and we are good people. We've had a tumultuous past, but as Ugandans, we always pull through. And I want to remember the biblical times. Whenever there was a problem in Israel, we remember there was a David who came. And also, when the children of Israel were in Egypt, Moses went. When he could not cross them to the Canaan, Joshua was there. Do we need a Joshua? Good night and God bless Uganda.